Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
Hi, I'm Kerry Fink with Helping Seniors Television. So good to have you joining us today. I think you're going to get a lot out of today's program. On behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, want to welcome you to the program. At Helping Seniors, we're all about helping you develop your own aging plan. It's the idea to educate, inform, and connect you to resources that are going to help you navigate your way through our senior years in the best way possible. And one of the best ways to do that, I think, we call it getting your ducks in a row, but it's the idea of learning those things that are going to help you on your journey. And I'm so excited to have with us today a good friend of the Helping Seniors organization. His name is Greg Schwendeman. He's an elder law attorney with the law firm Rhodes Law, PA. How are you today, Greg?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Good. It's
Thanks
good
for having me on.
Good to have the opportunity to sit down and talk. And we were talking about a topic that needs to be discussed, and I think it's an important one that we're going to try to cover today, which is what are all the things an elder law attorney can do? Now, most of us might think we know the answer to the question. We say, well, I know that you can help me get my will together.
Correct.
But that's probably about where our practical knowledge of the things starts and stops, because I know that's almost like the beginning of the equation, but that's not the whole story.
That's true. Elder law is a big umbrella. And so what we do as elder law attorneys is try to help the client and their families because it's a generational thing when you think about elder law. So what we try to do is help them manage their life. And when you think about it, all of us have really three main areas of life that we need help managing if we can't do it ourselves. And that's our legal world, our financial world, and our medical world. And there are some other things that overlap as well, but we will help you manage all of those. Get your ducks in a row, as you said, and then if, God forbid, something happens where you are incapacitated, who's going to take over for you? And the thing that I always stress to my clients is I want you to make your own choices. Otherwise, someone else is going to do it for you. And you may not like those choices. So while you have capacity, come in, sit down with an elder law attorney, and go through all of the phases of your life that need to have management.
Yeah, and as we go into this topic, I want to kind of remember there's a TV show, they call it Mythbusters. I want to kind of blow a few things out of the water first, because a lot of us in this day and age of the internet, we'll see these ads that pop up and say, here, do your own will, save thousands of dollars. And you and I have had this discussion, so I kind of almost feel like I'm leading the witness, but that can be a very bad idea at the precise time you need it to not be a bad idea.
You're exactly right. And it can be a super expensive idea.
Yeah.
We had one client who tried to cut costs, tried to save some money, and went to an attorney who did not practice in elder law. And this attorney drafted a few documents that did not meet the standards that we set. They didn't even meet the statutory standards. And his case ended up costing him probably about $60,000.
Oh my goodness.
Because he wanted to save a little bit of money. So.
And we've had this conversation, right? Because when you go down to the office supply store and you get a form and say, I'm going to fill out my own will or whatever the piece of paper I'm going to try to do, or maybe you go and you get some online service and you get it, and you think you did it correctly. Maybe you followed the instructions as best as you knew how. But the thing that you've really impressed on me is then that you have that at the exact moment that you need it to work, and that's a terrible time to find out it wasn't the correct document or it was imperfect or something like that.
Exactly. A will doesn't come to life, ironically, until you die, right? So once you die, it's too late for you to make any changes. You can't edit it. And what happens is when you make your own will, there's a whole host of problems you can do, such as instructing the house to be sold immediately upon death, and it may open that up to creditors' claims.
Wow.
There's just different things that you need to consider about the homestead protection Florida affords. You know, when you told me you wanted to talk about these things, just for fun, I looked on YouTube. Do you know on YouTube you can find videos on how to drill your own teeth?
Oh, no.
Today I found a video on how to do your own sutures.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't think any doctor in town would ever advise their patients that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And, you know, yet you see people going out and trying to do their own legal work. And all it's going to do is hurt you or hurt your family. So I always suggest, please, see an elder law attorney and have your documents done the right way.
You know, I think this is a case of, you know, that old expression, penny wise and pound foolish, because again, you're thinking you're going to save money, and you and I have had the conversation in the past where we've talked about the example where you meet a family and the situation has to be guardianship because the person that we're talking about is incapacitated, and there is no other way to have decisions made about that person's care except through that legal construct of a guardianship. Whereas you said the tragedy of it was if you just met that person 30 days before they had a stroke or something happened, you would have all the options in the world. They could lay out how they would want things to be handled in the case of a situation like that. Why do we not take better advantage of this? Is it just we?
It's humans in general, I think, do not like to talk about their own mortality. We see people who are, we've had a case recently where the person was dying of cancer. They knew they were dying of cancer, and yet they kept putting off making the will. And then they died, of course, and now the family, they're all fighting over it. And that's the worst part, is when you're gone and you can't make that decision anymore, you can't make your choice as to who's going to be your personal representative. Or while you're alive but incapacitated, who's going to be your guardian? Those choices are very important choices because family dynamics, not every family, I'm sad to say, gets along. And that comes into play. And it's when families don't get along, it gets very expensive very quickly.
Yeah, and so let's rewind just a hair here, because as you're talking about an elder law attorney, it is a specialized thing. You know, we've already talked in the brief time we've been chatting that it could be a mistake to go to your family attorney who's not really schooled in this and say, I need to do all this, because they don't understand the nuances. There's a thing we talk about in connection with this motto we have of getting your ducks in a row or making your aging plan. But the other thing that really is becoming a sub-theme of this is don't try this on your own, because those things that you don't know could really trip you up. So when we come back to elder law attorney, so we said there's a will, but there's so many more things that an elder law attorney does that's very valuable as we grow older. So let's throw some of those out on the table and talk about what are the things that an elder law attorney could do to help me.
Well, it comes down to really estate planning, and the emphasis is on the word planning. Because you want to meet with a person, and ever since COVID, we're seeing the age of our average client come down. A lot of times people wouldn't come to see an attorney until they're in their 60s and they realize, okay, now's the time I better start making plans. Because of COVID, we started seeing younger engineers, younger business owners who realize they need to make a plan. So they need, for the protection of themselves and their families, they want to come in and talk about a whole, sometimes one or two documents, other times a whole trust package. And so what they're looking at is, do they have a durable power of attorney? Do they have a healthcare surrogate and living will? A designation of pre-need guardian? And of course, a last will and testament and a trust. All these things working together lay out what your plans are. And that's very important.
You know, I think this is a question, and you and I have had a conversation about this before, that I think one of the problems is when we hear terms like estate planning and trusts, we think, oh, that's for really rich people.
Yes.
And I want you to take a moment to explain that is not, you know, we grew up in an area where they would talk about swimming pools and movie stars, and you just have this idea, estate planning, it sounds like I have all this. But basically it boils down to if you have a house, if you have some bank accounts, you need to be thinking in this way, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's not just for the very wealthy. Like you said, the word trust, you think, oh, I have to be a Rockefeller.
Right.
No. A trust is simply a legal vehicle that protects your assets and manages. You think of it as a safe. You put things in there to protect it, right? So you don't need to be super rich. You know, most of the legal community who practices elder law can help the average person do this at a very reasonable rate. You just got to go in, and what we need from you is to find out who you are, who your family is, what your wishes are, your assets, and then we can begin building the proper vehicle to help protect all of that.
Do you think people maybe put this off for two reasons? One, maybe they, like you said, maybe they don't want to really confront the fact that there is an end date. But the other thing could be that it just feels very, very intimidating. Like I don't even know the right questions I would need to ask when I come into your office to say, here's my situation. How do you work with somebody as they come in and they don't even really know where to begin?
Well, most people, they're new to this, and it is intimidating. It's like going to a doctor.
Sure.
And I want to jump back to what you were saying before,
Sure.
real quick on that, because I always think there's a great parallel, analogies between what we do as attorneys and the medical field. Years ago, you would have one doctor who did everything, just as you would have one lawyer who would practice all different things. And you had mentioned that, and I thought that was a great point you brought up, because today you want to go to an elder law attorney, someone who does just that, because the law has expanded so much. And so recognizing that when a person does come in, we want to do the talking first and ask them questions, find out who they are. We have questions written down, questionnaires to help them fill out, and because they start thinking, oh yeah, when they feel, I forgot about this, or I forgot about that asset, and then they begin doing that, and we'll ask them more and more questions, drawing out as much information as we can to get the plan that works for them. Because it's not going to be just one boilerplate plan that works for everybody. It can't. We're all individuals. We all have different families. Nowadays, we have blended families, which presents different issues than what you had back in 1950. So,
you know, that's actually a whole separate discussion right there by itself. But I wanted to stay on this point about, I think it should give us reassurance that when we come into your office, we're not necessarily expected to have all the answers. That's your expertise that will lead us to guide. Nancy Deerdorf, who's our operations director, she has this saying that she says, how do you know what you don't know? And so that's a problem for us if we come into your office. We don't know what we don't know, but it sounds like the reverse is that you're ready to help us sort through the issues so that we do get the right answers to the questions we need to be concerned about.
that's right. And if we don't, you know, you've got to realize when you're dealing with people in elder law, you have generally, you're looking at financial assets, real estate, healthcare. So we work with people who know what we don't. For example, we may work with a very experienced, for example, one of my friends is a real estate attorney in town. I ring him up all the time because I'm not going to give an answer on real estate. I'm going to let the expert do that.
Right.
I'm going to reach out to someone else who may be a wonderful real estate agent, okay? We also know who can give the answers on taxes. I have some great CPAs I work with. So yeah, we need to work with people and we will get you those answers.
Right.
And we'll help find the questions you don't even know you have.
So if somebody calls your office and says, hey, listen, I've been putting this off, but it really is time. I need to sit down and get some guidance on all this. What do you ask them to gather together when they come into your office for that first visit?
For the first visit, I just want them to be comfortable.
Okay.
I want them to come in. If they want to bring some, excuse me, if they want to bring in some bank accounts or maybe they're If they have a pre-existing last will and testament, power of attorney, of these legal documents we just talked about, if they want to bring those, that's fine.
Okay.
But the main thing is the first visit, I want to talk to them, put them at ease, find out what their desires are, and begin a relationship that way. And
Yeah.
then we'll get into, show us all the documents, and we'll prepare things down the road.
So you walk people through it kind of
Yes.
step by step. I was going to ask you that because you and I had this discussion. I said it's almost counterintuitive from the business side. If somebody walks in the middle of a crisis, there has to be a guardianship, it was an emergency case, that's thousands and thousands of dollars of legal fees. And ironically, as a business side, you would think, well, that would be more preferable, but yet your heart is to help somebody avoid all that by getting stuff done correctly at a fraction of the cost before you ever get there.
Exactly. I mean, watching, guardianship is a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's fantastic, but the ones you mentioned where it's that expensive and it's that aggravating to the family, you don't want to do that to anybody.
Right.
It's not the right thing to do. I mean, if you're worried about money, do it a different way.
Yeah.
Do things that help people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough opportunity in this world. You can help someone set up to benefit their family for generations. That's really what you want to do.
Well, I've heard you talk about the fact that if you do this, you're not only doing this, you're kind of doing this for yourself, but you're really doing it because you love your family. You're trying to take all the mystery out of the equation, reduce all those opportunities for
Right.
disputes later, and it all can be done on a relaxed time frame. As we keep talking about it, you get the right tool for the right job at the right time. And so one of the things, that we push real strong on the helping senior side, because we see it when Nancy picks up that senior information helpline. We've helped more than 5,000 families free of charge since Joe Steckler founded this organization in 2011. And, I can tell you the horror stories that she picks up the phone on, and I've heard it many times, like, well, now we have limited options. If you call me a year before you're going to be homeless, we have some
Right.
options. If you call me 20 minutes before the sheriff's there, because it's a whole different
Yeah.
world. And I'm sure that's something you absolutely can relate to in elder law.
Totally. We get those calls where it's after the fact, where many times people will call us and say, well, we need to have a power of attorney for my father. He's got Alzheimer's. And, the next question you want to find out is, when was he diagnosed? Because if it's early enough and the doctor will approve and say, yes, he can still execute a document, that's one thing. But too often, the call comes in and they say, well, Dad can't sign anything, but we need the power of attorney done. I'm sorry, it's too late at that point. You need to go guardianship. You cannot execute a legal document if you don't have capacity.
There is a window of opportunity and you have to be in front of that. You can't, we call it being ahead of the aging curve, not, you can't chase it, the aging curve. You have to be ahead of it, you can't be chasing it. So let me ask this question though. If somebody says, listen, it is time for me to get this pulled together, I need to go ahead and advance this case. I don't know if I have the right documents. I don't know if I don't even know, like we said, I don't know what I don't know. Probably your recommendation is you just need to come in, sit down, have a talk, get acquainted, and figure out what you have, where we go next from that. Is that how it works?
Exactly. No two people are the same.
Yeah.
Every case is going to be different. Some people have their personal life fairly well organized, and then as an attorney, it's a little easier, obviously, to get it more organized for the next step. But you do need to sit down. I would say come in, sit down, talk with us, let us find out what you need.
Now, I know the Rhodes Law Firm, Ruth Rhodes, has been a kind of like a fearless champion on behalf of seniors, just as I've seen you do over the years. And you guys really take a lot of, I guess, pride in the fact that you really look out after the people that come to the law firm. how do people get connected? And it was like, if they say, hey, I'm watching this, this is interesting to me, I probably really need to do something about it. What's the next step that they ought to do?
Well, next step, they can give us a call. Our number is 321-610-4542. And just give us a call, and we'll make an appointment for you, depending on what your needs are, and get you in and see us.
You know, I was going to take a moment, kind of as an aside, and say there are a number of great television programs that Ruth Rhodes has done where she talks about some of the issues seniors face. You can find every one of those, by the way, archived at helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. You can find them on our YouTube channel, Helping Seniors of Brevard, or even on our Facebook page for Helping Seniors. And, you know, it's just, and you guys are also famous for doing a lot of training seminars and things like that.
Yes.
I've seen you, you guys move around the community, and you'll have absolutely free of charge seminars where people can come in and maybe get even some more information just in general to help them frame their thinking.
That's right. Just last week, I was doing a training seminar at One Senior Place. And that was free, open to the public, and we do that frequently. Because we want people to learn. We want people to use that knowledge to better their life. So,
you know, just to go back to your analogy where you were talking about, you know, you can learn stuff. I remember asking our daughter at one point, how did you learn to make this? And she said, oh, I found this recipe on YouTube. And so I was smiling when you were talking about some of the things that you can figure out how to learn to do on YouTube. Some seem like you're probably better to leave those ideas alone. But we've talked so many times about this do-it-yourself paperwork because I have heard, for an example, that the power of attorney, and tell me if I get this basically correct, but the power of attorney is what you need to help conduct business on behalf of another person. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
So like if I'm trying to figure out and help mom or dad or aunt or uncle to go to the bank or certain things, they wouldn't talk to me unless I had, quote, power of attorney. And the problem that, as I understand, has been explained to me is that it's not really simple here in the state of Florida because it's very complicated form.
It is very complicated, and you know, Florida's a transient state. We have a lot of snowbirds, a lot of people retire, and they'll bring their power of attorney from another state, or it's old. So in 2011, the Florida legislature completely revamped the statute for the power of attorney. Then, of course, there's growing pains. They realized they made some mistakes, so they almost completely revamped it again in 2013. So the Florida power of attorney statute is very particular, and still we find local banks, some of them, usually the national ones, where their legal counsel is in another city, in another state, will give a lot of pushback. We don't get that kind of a pushback because we follow strictly what's in the statute when we draft our powers of attorney. Because it's it can be burdensome, and if you try to do it on your own with some form you get in an office supply store, I think it's going to really backfire when you need it most. So that you got to make sure that your power of attorney, you know, you're the principal. So you want to name an agent in that power of attorney who's going to help you, whether it's because you're unconscious from illness or what have you, or you went out of the country and you need someone to handle your affairs. You want that to be done the right way.
Yeah, right, because here again, you know, you're the loving son or daughter, and mom is laid up in the hospital, and now you've got to go to the bank because Florida Power is screaming or somebody, you know, something like that. And the bank, and then you thought mom had the right paperwork, and all of a sudden you find out that it wasn't what you needed to get the job done. My dad had an expression that he used to say. He said, I'm not poor. He said, I'm not rich enough that I can afford to buy something cheap that won't do the job. And to me, that really seems like what we're talking about here. A little bit of advanced planning and honestly, a little bit of finances early on seems to be the solution that would help you get the professional advice customized to your particular situation. And, you know, I don't know about you, but if you've ever filled out a survey or where a questionnaire where they're asking you a bunch of questions and you get stuck because there's a question and it's like all the time, some of the time, or whatever the question
Right.
is. And you're like, well, it's not really that simple. There's a little bit more to it. But of course, you can't ask the computer, well, how do I answer this question? But I could ask you that question.
Exactly. And that comes up all the time.
Yeah.
So I really think what you touched on there, trying to save a little bit of money now, it's the wrong time.
Yeah.
What you want to do is just spend a little bit of money because you're going to save a lot more in the long run.
Yeah. So let's talk one more time. So we're talking with attorney Greg Schwendeman, elder law attorney with the law office Rhodes Law, PA. And you guys have really built a specialty around this over the years. And if somebody wants to either find out about a seminar, maybe go ahead and say, it's time for me to sit down and have you look at what I've got, or maybe more particularly what I don't have but probably need. Once again, how do they get in touch with
Well,
you?
there's two ways they can reach us. One is our phone number, which is 321-610-4542. And the other way is going on to our website, which is rhodeslawpa.com.
All right.
And that's RHODES, Rhodes Law, PA.
Well, Greg, thank you for spending the time with us. We keep talking over and over in the helping seniors world, and that's, Joe has talked about an aging plan. And we always say, like in Florida, it's like a hurricane plan.
Yeah.
Just because we have a hurricane plan, the last thing we want is a hurricane. What we want is a plan if they tell us one's coming and we know how to deal with it. So when we talk about an aging plan, it's not that we're looking forward to a problem, it's we want to be prepared to tackle a problem if it were to surface in our situation. And so that's why this whole idea of getting your ducks in a row is so important. And so, Greg, I want to thank you for being here with us today. And viewer, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this program on Helping Seniors Television. On behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, we just want to thank you for taking the time to learn more about getting your ducks in a row, helping seniors of Brevard. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.